kind of sucky. But what I was saying is I could eat nasty Burger King. It's not nasty. I like Burger King. I got a double Whopper. And I'm trying something new tonight. I'm sure a lot of y'all have heard of it, but I'm trying Restream. So I'm streaming to Twitch and YouTube at the same time. So we're going to see how that works. I have no idea how that's going to work. But, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Should be fun. The other thing is I don't get to see any of my docs. I don't get to see the chat doc or any of that kind of good stuff. But nobody comes into chat anyway. So it's not like really a big deal. And I can always go into the phone like I'm doing right now and go, wait. Is anybody gonna chat? Probably not. But so anyway, tonight's episode is about people who just have their head in the sand. So there's a guy I follow on TikTok. Bright guy. Love him to death. I speak no ill of the guy. His name's Ben. I can't remember his last name off the top of my head. And he does this great series on... Oh, crap. I'm not even talking in the microphone. Man, that really sucked. That was really dumb, too. So what I was saying, before I realized I was being a total idiot, not even talking into the microphone, was that tonight's episode is people who've got their head in the sand. And I follow this guy on TikTok. His name is Ben, and I can't remember his last name. But he's super smart. Got a really great series. Got nothing bad to say about the guy. But he's got a really great series on, like, employers and employment and, like, really bad situations, like bad bosses, situations that, like, bad bosses do, like, really bad stuff, or, like, bad hiring practices, or bad job applications, or job descriptions, or hiring practices, just any number of things, right? Involving the workplace, and how, like, companies are out of touch, or bosses are just toxic, and all this to him, or tagged him in, or whatever. And he does a really good job about breaking it down and being like, this is stupid and here's why, or hey, this is a really great boss and here's why. But it's usually on the stupid end of this person did something really stupid and here's why. Well, he did one today, and I can't say I disagree. I'm gonna tell you what the scenario was. So the scenario was, it was one of the usual power alpha bros, or alpha power bros. Sorry, I had it backwards. And they were talking about how, basically being, he said in the clip that if you took and gave everybody $1 million within a certain period of time, it would be gone, because being wealthy is a mentality, right? And he said that if you took all the money away from all the wealthy people, evenly distributed among all the people in the world, that eventually all that money within a few years would end up back in the hands of the wealthy people again. Because, the mentality of the people who don't have wealth is to not be able to hold on to it. And the mentality of people who have wealth is to attract wealth, gain wealth. And Ben said, well, that's just totally stupid. That's just totally stupid. That's just totally wrong. Nothing about that is right. And he said that from a standpoint of, it is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because that implies that wealthy people they just naturally know how to be wealthy, but we know for a fact that a lot of these people are born into wealth, and that's how they got rich, and that they have the skills to stay rich. And he also said that, that's disingenuous to say that we shouldn't give out the wealth of the rich and spread it evenly and give the not wealthy an opportunity to be wealthy, right? And so it was just the dumbest thing he'd ever heard, right? And that somehow that being poor it's all about mentality, like this guy was kind of insinuating, according to him, and that it wasn't about, the lack of opportunities, the suppression of the system and all these other systemic factors. And that obviously this guy was just total jackass, had no idea what he was talking about, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I've thought about this for a minute. And I understand where Ben's coming from, right? I understand the instant revolt, right? The instant revolt in our minds of hearing that if we were given all this money, we would lose it within a number of years because we don't know how to be wealthy and we don't have the right mentality to be wealthy, and that the wealthy have the right mentality to be wealthy and they'll just get it all back, right? That's revolting to us. But I stopped and I thought about this a lot, right? Because I've thought about this before. This is not a topic I haven't thought about before. Because I grew up absolutely dirt ass poor. And right now I make a pretty good living. In understanding how I used to live versus how I live now, right? I had to grow in my knowledge of how to handle money. We all do, right? And that isn't even like the kind of money that you would get from this scenario that Ben was talking about and that was in this post, right? So I'm thinking, and then on top of that, well, and so I'm understanding to a point from just that aspect, right? Just that aspect, I'm understanding what this guy's talking about, right? Because for the most part, a lot of us wouldn't know how to handle that kind of money. We just wouldn't. We just wouldn't. It's not to say we couldn't be educated. I'm not saying we couldn't, but they did a study on all the lottery winners, people who won these large sums of money. And most of them are right back where they started or are worse off than they were before they won the money. That's facts. And that's a good cross-section. That's a random cross-section of people all across the United States, right? So there's a proven point, right, to kind of back up what this guy's saying. Now, just take that and pause for a minute. Pause that side of the equation, right? The summation that you take from there is that your average person isn't equipped to manage millions of dollars in such a way that they're able to effectively retain that. Right? The average person doesn't have the money training, the finance education, right? We just haven't been given that. Right? The American education system doesn't train us, doesn't educate us, doesn't enlighten us, or provide guidance on those kinds of things. Stock markets, money funds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So we don't know how. right off the bat. So just pause with that point. We'll continue. Now, the other side of the equation is where he said that the rich people are just automatically going to get it back because they have some inherent, he called it a good mentality for it. Poor words, but what he's getting at is that the wealthy people are used to handling those large sums of money. They have the education to handle those large sums of money. They know how to handle it and how to keep it and how to grow it for the most part, right? Not all of them, because we're speaking in generalities. Just like on the average person side, you'd probably have a few people who'd like natively just be like, okay, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need that. Why? Because common sense, I'm not going to lose my money. Well, on the rich people side of the equation, you're going to have those people who are going to be like, well, yeah, what do I do? I don't have the, I don't have my businesses. I don't know how to, so they're going to be kind of confused because, they got their stuff from mommy or daddy. And, to perpetuate that, they just jumped into a job in the family business. And, maybe they were second or third child. So they didn't have to know how to run the business, right? All they had to do was kind of like be vice president of a company or something. I'm using that as a very poor example, but, be vice president of a company, make $1 million a year and still have their trust fund. So, they're living in kind of a cloudy world of non-reality, the rest of us folks might say. But at the same time, due to working in the business and everything like that, they still kind of know how to handle money. They still know how to make business decisions. They still know how to do X, Y, Z. And they're used to it. They're used to doing all the money market funds and stocks and real estate and large dollar business transactions and all that kind of good stuff, that the rest of us would not be used to doing. And a lot of it is just the fact that they are used to doing that. So where somebody else, for like an average Joe who comes into that situation and has to make those dollar transactions, would have to like, and do a lot of research and all this, they are just going to be like, oh yeah, I would do that because, and because they've got history doing it. So they're able to retain that wealth, build that wealth, compound that wealth, and do all of those things. So the guy isn't necessarily wrong, right, from those standpoints. Yeah, he said it real bad. He said it real shitty, like poor people only have the mentality to be poor and rich people only have the mentality to be rich, which was a real shitty way of saying it. I totally agree. And from that perspective, Ben was spot on in the way he said it. But at the same time, the intent of the guy wasn't necessarily wrong, right? Generalities, he was right. Again, to a point, because we know, and I think the majority of people are smart enough to know that if all of a sudden the United States or the world basically said, hey, there's no more rich people, right? We're taking the top 1% wealth, or all of it, right? And we're distributing it equally among all the citizens of the country. So you're all equally wealthy. Just all of a sudden, I'm going to tell you, there's going to be a lot of accountants and financial planners who are going to get overrun, right? Now, the funny part about that is, this kind of leads back to the very thing that the original guy said in the video. The wealthy people are going to get their wealth back, because usually those people in the finance that people are going to be investing their money into to gain wealth are the ones that were wealthy, right? That's why the wealth is going to come back to them, because they held all the stocks, right? All that stuff. They are the ones running the finance companies. Even if you took away their wealth, they still have their job. So in a way, they're going to come right back to that money because you're going to pay them to do the jobs they were doing. So you're still, the poor people, the average person is still going to be giving them money. That's how they're going to get their wealth back, is because you're going to be paying them to do what they were already doing for the most part. Like some of the companies obviously weren't involved in finance or whatever. And, you know, they may then have to rely on their salaries instead of their multi-million-dollar trust funds and inheritances or whatever. So they'll have to rebuild their generational wealth all over again. But at the same time, in a way, they're still going to be able to rebuild a lot of it. They're still going to be in their jobs where they make, you know, whatever salaries that the average person doesn't make. They're still going to have, you know, all the knowledge of the ins and outs of the markets and the things that they currently have. So they're still going to get that wealth. Now, part of it does go back to something that Ben mentioned, and he said, you know, that it's a systemic thing that the average person isn't wealthy like the wealthy, right? Because there's systemic things in place that prevent them from reaching that level. And that kind of stuff, you know, when we're talking about the wealthy will get their wealth back because of the jobs they're in, the knowledge they have, the positions they hold, the favors, the ins and outs and all that. And that goes into what he said about the systemic, the systemic barriers, you know, that prevent the average person like you and me from taking that wealth and then becoming the uber wealthy. And that's very true. That is very true. But you know, I would say that's probably the one of the very few sets of actual barriers that we have. Now, that alone by itself, don't mistake what I'm saying, that alone by itself is like super extremely substantial, okay? If it's just that one barrier, I mean, that's like, you know, trying to overcome the Great Wall of China in a wheelchair, right? You're not going to do it. But, you know, there's more than just what Ben was saying that, oh, no, you know, that's not true. You know, poor people, or I keep saying poor people. I don't mean to say poor people, just the average person. But I guess we're all poor in comparison to, you know, the rich and the uber wealthy. But my point is that, you know, he was saying that there are all these barriers to the average person, and there's really not. There's really not a crap ton of barriers. The barrier is, you know, the historical knowledge, right? The barrier is, you know, the what's the word I'm looking for? You know, the barrier, okay, there's all the stuff that comes with old money, right? If you've ever heard the term old money, right? So old money is that, you know, people who's had their money for hundreds of years. It's not like the Bill Gates money who's only had his since the, you know, mid 90s, right? We're talking about the old money, the Rockefellers, right? You know who I'm talking about, the old money, right? So it's all the stuff that comes with that. You know, it's all of you're integral to the foundation of the finance system, right? You're integral to Wall Street, right? Your family's been a part of the makings of Wall Street since Wall Street's been a thing, right? Or it's been, you know, integral to the foundation of banking in America since that was a thing, or even earlier since banking came over from, you know, England. So when you've got that kind of thing going on and you're from one of those families, right, there's more to it than just, I know how to handle money, right? There's more to it. And I think everybody has to acknowledge that. And if you don't, you're being kind of naive. Because with that comes a certain amount of influence and power. And now those, if we want to acknowledge those, yeah, those are definitely things that the average person, no matter how much money they get, they're never going to have. Those may be the systemic things maybe that Ben was talking about. And again, those are things I totally agree with, that will always prevent the average person from becoming the uber wealthy, even if they get the money handed to them on a silver platter. It's just not ever going to be a thing, right? So it's like, the Bill Gates of the world, and I'm just picking on him. It could be Bill Gates, it could be Elon Musk, it could be Bezos, it could be whoever. They're going to be rich no matter what we do, right? But they're always going to be on the edge of things, because while they're rich, they're not old money, right? Old money makes the calls. But again, back to the original topic, Ben was talking about this guy. And so how does this relate to what people with their head in the sand? So, I think about when people do stuff like this and how just this, it's just that. And it's like, dude, you've got your head in the sand. Okay. I understand that it's infuriating to hear what this guy said. And I'll kind of reiterate what he said. He said, if we took $1 million and we gave it to all the average people in the world, within a few years, it'd be gone with no real improvement to their lives. And then he further said, if we took all the money from all the 1%ers and we distributed all the wealth evenly, so everybody in the United States had the same amount of money, within 5 to 6 years, all that wealth would go right back to the wealthy. All right. So just to reiterate what the problem is here. And Ben was like, no, that's not a thing. That's ludicrous to say that because the reason the guy said that was because that the average person is not equipped to handle that amount of money and be able to have it, retain it, and grow wealth, while the rich people, they know how to do that stuff. They have the right mentality for it, so they're obviously going to be able to retain it and grow it. Ben's statement was that diminishes, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but he was basically like, no, that diminishes the capabilities of the average person, and it overemphasizes the capabilities of the rich people. So just to reiterate that. But again, back to my point is, when you knee-jerk react that without logical thinking about the whole premise of the problem, your head is in the sand. And again, I love Ben. I follow him. I agree with a lot of his stuff. I very rarely disagree with his take on stuff. But in our modern culture, in our modern kind of environment, right? And trust me, I'm always taking the piss out of the I can't stand the Alpha Power Bros, especially when they say stuff like this. But when you think about certain things logically, right? We have to quit knee jerking. We have to quit kicking up our heels just because somebody said something that we didn't like. We can't keep kicking up our heels just because somebody said something that initially we're like, nah, that's bullshit. Got to quit doing that, right? It's not healthy, and it prevents us from missing a critical point or a critical thought problem. And in this particular one, like I said, if you would have taken what the guy said, not necessarily for his words, but if you would have thought about the problem, you would have realized that he, in essence, in a way, was right. Most people don't know how to handle millions of dollars, and the rich people know how to handle the money, and they're in the positions that attract money, their jobs and et cetera. So they're all just going to get it back, right? And it's generalities, not specifics. Not every single average person is going to piss their money away, and not every single rich person is going to get all their wealth back, but you get what I'm saying. And to just kick your heels up at that and be indignant that can't possibly be true. You're not taking all these factors into account. Well, no, you didn't take all the factors into account, right? Because there's more than just the face of the problem that you have to think about. And we do that with so many things nowadays. And it baffles me, whether it's politics, whether it's social problems, whether it's economic problems, whatever it is. And, I'm not picking on Ben, but I'm just picking Ben's topics, which are about employment issues and things like that. He picks the ones that are pretty self-explanatory, and they're pretty much, they are what they are. right? But, I see a lot of people that like to kind of follow in what he does. Well, not follow, but they do kind of similar stuff to what he does. And they'll pick stuff and just pick it apart. And I'm like, no, that was entirely reasonable what that person did. That was pretty reasonable. Yeah, they could have said it a little bit better, or yeah, they were a little rude, but no, that was perfectly reasonable. So, like, for example, I'll give you a good example. So, like, the whole quiet quitting movement over the last few years, right? Has gone off the deep end. Not the quiet quitting movement itself is bad. Okay, but like everything else, we take it to extremes, and the extreme is always bad, right? So, give you an example of how bad. Had a guy on one of my tech forums who said that if he was made to come on, he's currently remote, but if he was made to come on site, then he was going to start charging the company from the time he left his house till the time he got on site. Because that's not his time, that's time he's working. And it's like, no, dog, it's not. And he wasn't, and he wasn't alone in that. There were a lot of people who are like, well, no, if I've got to go into the office, I'm starting the clock at the time I leave my house. And that's where it gets ridiculous, because your time isn't from the time you leave your house. It's the time you start working. That's when the employer pays you. Unless, it's a different type of work, unless it's some sort of contract job or your job involves travel to sites or something like that, where that is taken into consideration, right? But that's not what this guy, ow, Nikes. I just smashed my knee into the desk. But that's not what this guy's job was. This guy's job is a desk job, right? He gets up in the morning and goes to his desk in his home office, or he gets up and goes to a physical location and sits at a desk, and that's his job. So that's just an example. But there's other ones. And a lot of them I see are like, the main thing now is, which is really huge, and is, I'm only doing the minimum, and I should get a raise before I do anything else. And it's like, what's the minimum? Right? And they're not, and once I hear what all they've got to say, they're not even meeting the minimum of their job description. They're talking about a daily set of duties that they consider to be the minimum day by day, but isn't even the minimum of their job description. And it totally baffles me, because, they're going to wonder, and some of them have posted in some of the forums that I follow. They're going to wonder why they've gotten fired. And they're going to get fired for lack of performance. And they're going to come back and say, well, I met the minimum. And they're going to be like, no, you didn't. Yes, I did. I did this and this and this and this and this today. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. But you didn't meet the minimum of your job description, because your job description is this. It's this overarching thing that you didn't meet. You tried to break this overarching thing down into a daily set of duties, and that doesn't fly. For example, my job, I work in cybersecurity, and there is no set of daily tasks that I can check off on a checklist to say, well, I did my tasks for today, so I'm done. I did my tasks in 6 hours instead of 8, so I should be able to, and this is another good one, what they say, well, I did my tasks for today, so I should be able to go home. It doesn't matter whether it's 6 or 8. They pay me for the tasks I've done, not to be here for 8 hours, which is a crock of horse shit for the most part. I mean, some jobs do have a checklist like that, and if that's the case, I mean, hey, that's between you and your company. But most jobs are like that. Most jobs don't have a set of tasks that you do in an X hour period, and that is it. Now, they may have a checklist of tasks, right? But usually you are there to also be there in case something blows up in the company's face. But my job specifically doesn't have that checklist of stuff. My job is there is a very broad, long-term end goal, right? That can't be checked off in a day, a week, a month, a year. It doesn't work like that. So regardless of how many tasks I finish in a day, there's 4,682 other tasks that can be done. So, screw that checklist and gone in 6 out of 8 hours. I just go on to the next task. And I get that there may be a limited set of jobs that are task-based, and you can do that. But most of the people that I hear this from do not have those kind of jobs. And I know they don't have those kind of jobs because I either held that exact job or they work in the same type of career field that I have, and I know what their job entails. And I know they don't have that kind of job. I know there's no checklist set of tasks. It just doesn't work that way. So there's that. And it just baffles me how, people are just like so wrapped up around the axle of, well, I should be able to, just do this checklist and go home, or whatever their definition of quiet quitting is. Now, I will say, where I do agree with the quiet quitting 100% is, if you've been busting your ass and you've been that top performer, and the company is, and you are the top performer, you are going above and beyond, and the company has decided that they are not going to compensate you for that, then now. Okay, then I will do what the job requires and move on. I will continue to do what the job requires, and I will continue to do it daily, and I will continue to do a good job, but I will no longer continue to do an excellent job. And, if you want to compensate me at some point in the future, then I will go back to doing an excellent job. Because I've been there. Excellent job for years, and sorry, we can't give you a raise this year because of blah blah blah. Sorry, we can't give you a raise this year because blah blah blah. And here's the thing: it doesn't matter whether it's the company's or the manager's fault. It doesn't matter where, I just, I gave this person over here a raise instead of you, or it was bad judgment on their part, or it doesn't matter if it was the company's budget. We just don't have in the budget, and they could be 100% accurate, factually okay. All right, it's irrelevant. I'm still not getting compensated for the performance. Now, if it's budgetary issues, sounds like somebody in management better start doing a better job and get the ship righted so that we can start all getting compensated fairly. And then we can start performing like we should. Or, like, personally, I like to perform. I like being that high performer. I just like getting compensated for it. I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. And usually I never have an issue with that. Usually. I have had an issue with it before. But anyway, so as long as it's within my power to control, and here's the other thing too. And I know a lot of you all will disagree with this, and that's okay. This is personal preference. And understand it's personal preference. So the ones you hear are going, fuck you, you're a suck ass, or you're whatever your comment is about me. I'm going to look at you dead in the eye. I don't give a shit what your comment is about me. But I personally am not one of those people who gives a shit what somebody else makes compared to me. If we're doing the same job and I find out you make, let's say you make 20 grand more than me, right? I don't care. I just don't care. Right? My question is, do I feel like I'm getting fairly compensated for the job? Take out of context what they're making. That has nothing to do with me. Look at the job, look at the labor market, look at the company averages and everything. Am I getting compensated fairly for what the job is? And in consideration with my performance. Yeah, roger that. You're making 20 grand better? Shit. I need to know what your negotiation technique is. But I'm not going to be pissed. I'm not going to go back at the boss and be screaming and bitching that this person's making 20 grand more than me or whatever, right? That's not how I roll. You may have negotiated better than me. You may literally have better negotiation tactics than me when you got hired. That's entirely possible. You may have a certification or something that I don't, right? Or you may have come in a period where they needed to pay you more to get you to leave another company that they didn't meet, right? There's other factors there that may be a reason why you're getting compensated more than me. And honestly, I don't need to know all that shit. I just don't, right? The only time I need to know is like if we've been there for a while and I'm consistently outperforming you over and over and over and over and over again, and I'm not getting compensated to the level I feel I need to be compensated. That is the kicker. It's not me versus you. It's not me versus another person, right? It's me versus the corporate pay scale and my performance therein. So I don't give a shit what somebody else is making. I just don't. Never has been a thing. Way back at my very first job at the local swimming pool cleaning filters. I just don't give a shit. Never have. And I know for some of y'all that's a big, huge thing and y'all get bent out of shape about it, and that's fine. If that's your value, you do you. I just personally just don't give a shit. Just don't care. Just don't care. And I'm not going to quite quit over that. I'm just not, that's not a thing for me. Not a thing. Again, me versus the company pay scale. And my, if I'm busting ass and blah, 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 and doing all this stuff and I've got all the right certifications or whatever, and I'm doing everything, great, dress right dress. And, I've been there, I've got time, and I find out I'm still on the bottom end of the pay scale. I'm going to be going, hold up. We need to have a conversation. I'm doing all these duties. I'm top performer, got all the certs, doing this. Why am I still on the bottom of the pay scale? Then we'll have a different conversation. And I could still be, and after the conversation, I may still be on the bottom of the pay scale. It could be, well, here's why. You work at one of our smallest sites. You work at one of our smallest locations. Your scope of duties is less than everybody else's. Even though you're a high performer, you got this, and this. Your scope of duties is less than everybody else's. And in addition, we pay not corporate wise, but based on your site. Your site has a budget for personnel and raises and things, and we pay out of that. And there's a scale for your site and blah blah blah. And I'm like, oh, okay. Is that true for every site or just mine? Every site? Okay, well that makes sense. I can understand that. So it's not just me. So I have to ask, though, am I getting also additionally bumps in compensation for my good performance? Right? So there's just stuff there that you still do, but I'm not going to get bent out, me versus you. It's just not a thing. So back again, I'm spinning back around. I'm at the, I will eventually get to the point, man. But when we talk about the quiet quitting, how people's got their head in the sand, people think, and I know this because I've talked to people about these very topics, and it surprises me every time I hear people think that companies have just like unlimited budgets. They have like unlimited capacity. They do stuff just because they can, and it always baffles me, right? So, as a specific example, many years ago, I was a union steward for a company, and we were working on renewing a contract, right? And so the union body wanted us to really hammer pay increases, which I was more than willing to do. I was part of the negotiation team. So we went in, we met with the company, and we said, look, they're really hammering pay increase this time, not so much benefits and some other stuff. but pay increase because we didn't get it on the last contract. We didn't really get anything pay. They're really, really hammering pay. And they were like, look, we respect that. And we respect it so much, we're actually going to break out the books and we're going to show you why we can't give this huge raise. We're going to give you a raise. You deserve it. We're going to give you guys and gals a raise. But what you're asking for is unrealistic, and we're going to show you why it's unrealistic. So they broke open the books. Sales had dropped like 30%. And while we had done some cost savings actions and some other stuff, material prices had gone through the roof. Sales had gone down 30%, and a bunch of other stuff. And we're like, shit. We're even lucky to get a raise. Yeah. Okay. And so I knew how to read. I knew how to read the books. I knew how to read a profit and loss statement. I knew all about that. I had experience in that before. So I knew they weren't bullshitting me. I knew they weren't just, making shit up. I could read the actual profit and loss statement. And so we go back and we tell the union body, we're like, hey, look, we appreciate that y'all want this. We went and we talked to them and they're going to give us a raise, but it's not going to be what you want. And here's why. And I literally had a guy stand up and say, that's bullshit. Companies have unlimited money. They have unlimited pockets. They are lying to you. And I just looked at him. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about right now? Companies do not have unlimited pockets, man. Companies do not have unlimited money. You have to have sales. Got to have profit. You got to have all these things, right? So you got to have, it's sales minus expenditures equals profit. Now, part of those expenditures is labor, which is what you're asking for, which is the raise, right? But they have to do it in such a way that they're still making a profit. I said, I looked at the books and I know how to read the books, right? So they didn't lie. They didn't just make up something. They opened the books to me and I know how to read the shit. Well, they gave you a false set of books. It was a fake set. And I'm like, dude, no, it wasn't. Trust me. I would be able to tell if it was a fake set of books. No, they got unlimited pockets. You're just trying to sell us out. And I'm like, dude, why the fuck would I try to sell you guys out? Why the fuck would I try to sell you guys out? But this is where I talk about people's head in the sand. They hear something that they don't want to accept as true. And just like the, the old adage about the ostrich with their head in the sand, man, they just duck it. Nah, that's not true. I don't want to hear it. And the response, and it goes on with reasonable freaking adults, man, reasonable freaking adults. And they're just like, I don't want to hear that. That's not true. It can't be true because it doesn't fit what I want to believe. And it's like, God, okay, man, look, no, I appreciate the fact that you want this to be true, but it's not. And it's just not, right? So, with this quiet quitting thing, people don't understand that affects the company when taken to the extreme, right? I'm talking about people who are just all of a sudden like, okay, I was a high performer, now I'm just an average performer. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the people who are like, well, I did my 6 tasks for today. That's all they're paying me for. That bullshit, right? Or whatever, right? That's the bullshit I'm talking about. Or people who are like absolutely unwilling to help their coworkers. This is another one that gets me. Got to talk about that. Got to rant about this one for a second, right? People who are unwilling to help their coworkers. This one blows my mind every time I see this bullshit. Because they go, well, management didn't prepare for that. How the frick does management prepare for you to quit with no notice? Because that's one of the things about this quiet quitting bullshit, right? Is, oh, don't give companies a notice because they won't give you one. That is true. But then you all want to come right around and say, well, I'm not going to help out my coworkers because poor planning on management's part. How the fuck are they supposed to plan on you quitting with no notice? They can't. And they can't hire 10 extra people just in case somebody fucking quits with no notice. That's not how that works. And that really drives me up the wall because they don't see how those two things are related. And they think that management can somehow just pull employees out of their ass. Oh, it's because you don't pay them enough. No, it's because you quit with no notice, and now I've got to go out there and hire somebody. That does take some time. Well, it's because you don't pay enough. Not everything is about pay, dog. Not everything is about pay. Yes, I don't mistake me. I'm very well aware that pay is mostly the deciding factor on whether somebody takes their job or not. I totally understand that. But there is a process a company has to go through to hire a person to fill a job. There's a process. Whatever that process may be, whether it's somebody in the office runs and puts a job, request on Indeed or, excuse me, whatever, there's still a process and it still takes a few days. So in the meantime, what happens to that work, right? What happens to the work? If somebody was doing it before, it still has to be done. So, and then of course the obvious answer that people are going to give, well, the manager should be doing it. The manager can't do everything. I get that you want to say they could because they're the manager. Well, that's their problem, not mine. Yeah, I get that. And it's childish. I'm not saying they should expect one other person to pick up that entire job. That's not what I'm saying either, because that's also childish and bullshit of the manager. But if they said, hey, can you pick up this one duty, until we find somebody? I mean, yeah, just fucking help them out. Now, obviously, you track that shit. Go into your freaking Outlook calendar or whatever on a paper calendar and say, on this day, I assumed this duty because so-and-so left. I was told they would hire somebody within this amount of time. And then, of course, when they don't hire somebody, you go to your boss and say, hey, I've been doing this extra duty since this time. I should be compensated for this extra duty because it's not mine. It's not mine. I started it on this date, right? And then if you don't get compensated, then yeah, then you can quit doing the duty because it's not fucking yours. But in the meantime, help out, right? The duty's got to get done, and it's not a matter of, well, it's not my problem. Yeah, it is, because if it doesn't get done, right, then that affects the company very significantly in some cases, and that affects you. And if you don't think it does, man, you don't know how a company runs. I'm sorry to say. I'm very sorry to say. And I also understand that, well, that's the company's problem. I don't want to help the company. I'll just go find a new job. Hey, that's entirely within your right to do, and maybe, I can hear it right now. Okay, boomer, I get that shit all the time because I say something reasonable that somebody doesn't want to hear. And I love it. I eat it up. I love it because it's not being a boomer. One, I'm not a fucking boomer. Learn your generations. And yes, I know before you do it again, yes, I know it's not a generational thing. You're using it just as a general insult. I get that, but you're not even fucking using it right. But it's not about that, man. This is not about that. You can do the duty without, taking it on forever. And you could tell the boss, yeah, I'll do it for a while. I'll do it for 2 weeks, or I'll do it for a week, or whatever, or I'll do it until we hire somebody and the expectation is 6 weeks or whatever. I'm not saying you got to do it for 6 weeks. I'm just, thought a reasonable expectation of time, usually however long it takes you to hire somebody, or if they're going to promote, right? Or we're going to try to talk about, Bob should take this job and he'll be ready in 3 weeks, whatever. You get what I'm saying. But, set a timeline. And you can do that with the boss. Yeah, hey, I'll pick up that duty for 3 weeks. Or, hey, yeah, I can fit it in for an extra $1 an hour or whatever your increase would be, depending on what the duty is, etc. Weasel a little raise out of it if the duty is not too invasive in your normal workflow. Do it for different little raise. Because that's how you get raises. You're telling them you'll not do anything extra till you get paid. Say, hey, yeah, I'll pick it up for a little something. Negotiate, whatever. But you got to keep the company running, man. You got to keep the company running so you still have a job. And if you don't like your company that much to want to keep it running, then you don't need to be there to begin with. You should be finding another fucking job. And if you're in one of those places where you can't find another job that easily and you got to hang on to the one you got because it's the only one you can get, well, that sucks. And sincerely, I feel for you. Sincerely, I do. I feel for you because I know what a shitty situation that is. I know what a very, very, very shitty, what a very, very shitty situation that is. I'll give you an example of how I know how shitty a situation that is. I worked for a company, won't mention who they are. I left because my chain of command was failing to support me in any way. I mentioned this in a prior video. I actually don't know if I uploaded that video, but they were failing to support me in any way. I let them know that they were failing to support me multiple times. I even got a new boss, and it wasn't just the boss. It was the whole chain. But failing to support me, I needed help, asked them for help multiple times, never got it. And well, I won't say never. I got help like 2 or 3 times out of like dozens of times that I asked. And the times that I did get help, what I was provided was wrong. So I couldn't use the help they provided. And when I put in my 2 weeks, they still didn't do anything. They didn't even out-process me, no nothing. That's how cruddy it was for me to work there. So I understand if you're in one of those situations. Luckily, I was able to get out. It took me a while. And I'm even in an area where jobs aren't that hard to find. Just my particular career field and my particular position in that career field is a little hard to find. But again, I sympathize with you because that sucks if you can't get out of where you work. But people just, their head in the sand, man. Their head in the sand about what is really, I try to encourage people when they hear stuff that they initially just, they're just initially just, no, okay, stop, pause, and think about what has triggered you about that situation. Realistically, what has triggered you? Let's not use the word triggered. Okay, that's bad. I know that a lot of people don't like that word. I really don't like that word. I'm not even know why I'm using it. What about that statement has made you react so negatively? Right? What has made you instantly react so negatively? And parse that through. Think about it. And really think about it. Don't just take your side of the equation and go, well, because blah, 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 blah. No, stop. Because that is you just knee-jerk reacting to the top level of that conversation. Right? Think it through. Percolate on it. Let it trickle down. And then think about the other person's side of it. I'm not saying you agree. You've heard me say this a million times. I'm not saying you have to agree with it. But think about what the other person's point is. Right? Think about if you were that person, what is the point you are trying to make and why? Right? And let that resonate with you for a minute. And then reflect on why you're so upset about whatever you just heard. I'm not saying spend 10 minutes on it. All right. I'm just saying take a brief moment to go, okay. And then see if you're still mad about it. See if it's still got you so upset that you're, going off. I find a lot of times that when I do that, when I'm like getting so just initially fired up about an issue that when I stop and parse and go, then I flip it over on the other side and think about it for a second. I'm like, okay, I understand. There's a different side to this that I've got to think about. And then generally I find that I don't have my head buried in the sand about a particular whatever, is going on, that I've tended to think it through. Not perfect at it by any means, how none of us are, but as we stop and parse a little bit more, we pause, reflect, kind of ingest, it does make it a little bit easier for us to go, okay, I get it. But, not all of us can do that, and that's acceptable. That's acceptable. But hey, guys, that's all I had for tonight. I just want to talk about, how we tend to like bury our heads in the sand about stuff, and kind of had two little topics there that I wanted to talk about. Ben's video, and then, give you an example about the quiet quitting and how people just bury their head in the sand on that. But I'm going to wrap this up for tonight with Chat Operant. And I hope you guys and gals will join me on my next episode. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. And